I'm not a voting member of this committee. No, but you are a voting member. Okay, are we good with the recording, Louisa? Sorry, I'm rambling on. Good evening and welcome to the Environment and Facilities meeting, the first, in fact, of the civic year 2025. Today's date is the 19th of June and I am Drew Creek, the Mayor of Newquay, and it is my pleasure to open this first meeting of the civic year, as I said. Item number 1 on the agenda is the election of a committee chairperson for 2025-26. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Slade.
I would like to nominate Councillor North as chair. I think it should be fantastic in the job. She's very experienced and we work very well together. Anyway, thank you.
Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Avi. All in favour? Thank you very much. That is unanimous. I shall hand over to you now, Margaret.
Evening, everybody. Obviously, the second agenda item is to elect a vice chair. So do we have any nominations for vice chair? I'm happy to vote for Mr. Slade. We've got seconder, Councillor Creek, all in favour? That's unanimous. Lovely. Thank you. So we're just going to go through, obviously, the items. I'm a little bit slow, not that anybody really wants to know, but I got here at 6:30, couldn't find my phone, had to leg it. Can you imagine me legging it back to Sainsbury's to ask had it been found? They had a look on the CCTV and they said you left here with it in your hand, Margaret. Got back here and it was sitting there. So I am pretty hot and bothered, as you can see, but I'm sure I'll, gather myself as the meeting goes on. So this is our first meeting since the 11th of March. So we're just going to look at the minutes. Oh no, sorry, I've forgotten to receive apologies. Any apologies this evening?
No apologies, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. To receive declarations of interest as and when. And then to take as read the minutes of the 11th of March. So obviously they're in your pack. So I won't go through page by page. Has anybody got anything that they want to ask about? Or are we happy to say it's an accurate description of what happened on the 11th of March? I'm happy to propose. We have a seconder for the minutes. Councillor Slade, all in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Abstentions or objections? Abstain. Okay. That's fine. So, any actions on the, Joe?
Everything should be on the agenda, Chair.
Okay, lovely. So matters arising, they're all within the agenda. Item 7 is verbal or written. There's nobody in the gallery, but we would go for a written question first, and we do have one from somebody. A member of the public. Let me see what they're asking about the Gannell car park. So you've all seen that letter in your pack. So they're asking us to give an update about the large potholes that have appeared in the Gannell Old Boatyard car parking area. Do you know if Joe Ashton or anybody's been to have a look at them?
I had an update from the Environment Manager before his annual leave. His team will be looking at it within the coming weeks. They're currently at half capacity at the moment, so as soon as they're back to full capacity, they'll be looking at that. The large pothole in front of the site has been repaired.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Have we gone back to that resident just to let them know?
I was going to wait till the outcome of this meeting, Chair.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Item 8 is the... Sorry.
Can I ask a question about that? I
You
thought
just say who you are because we're being recorded, so people
Yeah.
know who you are.
I'm Councillor Abigail Hubbocks. Potholes? I thought they were Cornwall Councils. I'm just out of curiosity, so I know how to answer people. How does that work?
So I think we lease the car park. I'll allow Joe to tell you.
Yeah, Councillor North rightly said, we lease that particular car park down at Gandalf from National Trust, and it's held in a rolling 1-year lease that neither party have never seen fit to kind of give it back, because we maintain it. And the National Trust, I'll be honest, don't have any wish to take it back either. So the only other car park within our remit is South Bristol. So every other pothole that you see and on any other highway that you see will be Cornwall Council highways.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Which is the Earthshire CIC report. So I'm going to let you take that,
Oh.
Joe. I did read it and I...
Oh, okay, yeah, because can I
Afterwards, Liv?
talk afterwards as well? Because I met Tristan yesterday, so yeah, I didn't realise.
No, that's fine. I mean, you'll have to appreciate I'm playing a little bit catch up as well myself because I'm not intimately familiar with some of these projects. However, the update that I had in regards to Pole Wheel, so our grants officer was tasked to essentially look at what available grant funding there might be for Tristan, and that is essentially forms the Earthshare CIC report. He's highlighted some things there that might be of use to Tristan. I wasn't sure whether it was relevant for this committee to see or whether it's just more relevant for Tristan to see for his own benefit. So that's really for Tristan to kind of look at. I don't know whether he discussed that with you yesterday, Councillor Thompson, but you've got a separate report on Pole Wheel from the Environment Manager, and there are certain things which he's chasing with the developers, and Tristan, I think, is committed to doing certain things as well in terms of reporting the damaged trees and compensation that we are chasing from the developer. I do have separate requests in relation to this in regards to the boundary, because I know that has been a point of contention for a while now. Really, there's only so much we can do. We're not land registry specialists. So I do have a quote for a party wall surveyor to essentially go to site and actually iron out where the boundary is, whether there's any potential encroachment or not. And that was £150 for that survey. So I wanted to bring that to this committee for your consideration as well. If you wish, Chair, the other things in the report are, I think the dropped curb is a sticking point for Tristan as well. And it's a sticking point for us because there's only so much she can do as us as a local authority. Highways, unfortunately, do have the final say in a lot of it. We did install a drop curb at Tren Creek, but there's no TRO on that section. So whilst you can facilitate access for a vehicle, that doesn't necessarily stop someone from just parking in front of it. And unfortunately, I think if we did that approach with Pole Wheel, we would have the same issue. We could put in a drop curb, but you wouldn't be able to stop vehicles just parking in front of it. And that I did relay that to Tristan quite a while ago, because it's not for the want of trying, but we are stymied. So the Environment Manager has put costs together for a drop curb if he wants to go down that road. Excuse the pun.
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap, and I can't say it's been completely perfect for access to Tren Creek. I think there's become a informal understanding between us and the residents that we get access when we need it, but we still get people parking in front of it. So that's the only point of caution I would make. And for example, if you did want to go down that road and planning permission, the council policy with all planning applications is it would have to be a recommendation to full council first to apply for planning, and then you can go for it. So I'm not trying to be too dismissive of it, and I can see what he's trying to achieve. I don't have a solution to that particular problem.
In access now, is there a drop curb or? I'll have to go and have a look at it, to be honest.
Yeah, vehicle access, there is no drop curb in front of it. So there are drop curbs on the properties either side, but obviously that's their own driveway. So pedestrian access, I mean, in Cornwall Council's words, not ours, they think it's suitable for pedestrians. That's arguable. So in terms of deliveries, it is just a case of as and when that space is free in front of the in front of our land, and they would have to ramp the curb to get on.
It might be easier if I go first. So I met with Tristan yesterday and described various issues. So yes, I think we need to get a proper surveyor, and I would fully support that, to actually identify the boundary compared to the deeds, because at the moment there is a cliff where they've dug out for the road on the development on the west side. And that has encroached and took away the boundary which the tree windbreak was planted on, and the fence has gone. The developers are also after the footpath. So they're really after another at least 2 meters of that, and they think that's their divine right. They're also then wanting to get rid of all their tonnage of topsoil down the bottom. So I think we need to start standing up to the developer there and you know, really find out and say what's going on, and like, no, that's not acceptable, and that a proper barrier will need to be put up, because I said there is a cliff there on that west hand side of quite a height. I'd say, well, it's difficult looking from above as opposed to on the development side, but I'd say 3 or 4 meters. Where it's been excavated out, and there's a curbstone at the bottom, which I presume they're going to have a pavement around, and then houses opposite. So there's an awful lot of damage that's been up there. There hasn't been suitable recompense from the gas pipeline that was put in as well. So, and there is a grant that where the National Grid have put works in, that we can apply for to doing that. And I think there's electricity, the cabling has gone in on the southeast of the site. So we need to verify that, and then Tristan, we can apply for grants from the National Grid for that. Because in my mind, it was not set up properly as a site. It needs a building. And we need to really decide whether, for putting in for planning permission, whether Town Council would go for that, to look for grant funding for a building to go on, and then that needs evidence of community support, especially if we go for like lottery fund or for SIL money. We need to have that community on board. So, like we did with the Climate Action Group. We can go out to the community in various formats to get that community support. And I'd suggest that part of that then is putting in for the drop curb and putting a disabled parking space where the pear tree is at the moment by the road, because the pear tree, and Tristan is happy to move the pear tree and the plants which are there, they're easily moved. And that could be part of it, because the building would be in that, unless you go up there, in that triangle as you go in on the site. I suggest not just a wooden shed that is a more, you know, whether it's something made out of containers, but it needs joining up to the mains and electric as well. So I suspect we're going to be looking at around 100 grand for something like that, for connection and everything. To happen, and I suggest then the drop-down curb for that, and a disabled parking space could be part of that at the entrance to the site. It desperately needs to be on a weekly, regular environment team strimming rota. That somebody goes, I'd say something like on a Wednesday from 9 till 12, and they start strimming, because the trees are, and the plants there are struggling, and it needs proper support for Tristan on the site. because they're stunted at the moment because they're in competition with the 5-foot high grass that's there, and to be able to access into it. It's great that it's fenced off now, so the dog running isn't an issue anymore. And it will be great when it is streamed around a path around the edge that people can walk around the edge of the fenced off area. There wasn't any issue of dog waste when we were there. There was bits of litter which picked up and put in the bin. The siting of the bins isn't ideal because in the open space there in this weather they smell incredibly. So they're sited where the drop down curb would be, so they'll be easily moved. I imagine to a slightly different location would be really useful. But Tristan's really keen to, and there, there's great, the biodiversity which is happening there is great, but it's keeping that ongoing assistance there. But I really think that it needs a proper building, it needs shelter, it needs somewhere to store tools and equipment and to be using as a proper teaching resource, which I think is what was originally intentioned for the community. And you just need to support that. But we do need to decide whether we spend that money as an outage so we can then put in for big grant money for that.
Thank you for that. Tristan did have a group of help. I mean, how long's it been going?
He's lost them.
Easy, before COVID, wasn't it?
The volunteers dropped off when the developers started, so he's lost that. So it's just really him and his partner which are up there. So I think you could probably get volunteers and things back, but it's having those facilities to support them, that they're there, that they've got somewhere to sit. And
Councillor Creek.
Thank you. I also met Tristan a few weeks ago. Thank you for the comprehensive update, Councillor Thompson. I think the building issue is one that isn't going to be solved today. That's quite a chunk of cash that we're looking for that. But I do happen to believe that it's probably worth it. I think the issue here is that land belongs to Newquay Town Council, belongs to the people of Newquay, and we have agreed to allow Earthshare CIC to essentially run it on our behalf. If they give it back to us and they decide not to run it anymore, then there's a cost involved in us managing that land in whatever form that would take, and whether that just be let it go back to, essentially sort of brushland, I suppose. But I think, regardless, I think it's incumbent upon us to support them because it's probably it's less costly for them to manage it than for us to manage it, I would suspect, with a little bit of support from us. So I think, the weekly, particularly over the spring and summer, the weekly support for a couple of hours for the environment team seems like a reasonable ask. And I know that when I was up there, I got the environment manager up there as well at the same time, and we had some of the team there doing the work, and I was under the impression that was going to be an ongoing arrangement. I appreciate that we're a bit short-staffed on the environment team, and I did speak to the clerk today about getting some additional agency resource in, just because we're at the sharp, pointy end of the season, and we can't really be short on staff over the next 6 weeks. So let's support him ongoing. Let's get that sorted. I'd be quite happy to support a proposal to seek planning permission for the drop curve. I get it's not a perfect solution, but it's the only one that we have that is likely to work and solve the issues around access, particularly for deliveries, which I know when I met Tristan on site was a huge issue. So I'm quite happy to support. I appreciate that we haven't got firm quotes for the cost of the drop curb, but starting the planning permission presumably is a step in the right direction, and it's not going to get done before September anyway. So we've got time to get quotes for that, I think. So I'd be quite happy to propose that. The other thing I spoke to Tristan about, it goes back to the CIC, is that clearly that requires some some money to keep going. Things like public liability insurance are required. And I think what I said to Tristan was, you need to be really honest with us about what it is you need. And if you need us to support you ongoing with £500 a year for some public liability insurance and a few £100 for some I don't know, ad hoc materials, then you need to tell us that, because we can budget that in. What we can't do is have you keep coming to us and saying, I can't run this because I need this pot of money, and it always being, sort of cap in hand. I'd rather have a plan and stick to it. So I'd be really keen for us to budget that into next year and support him with any insurance. I don't know how we would do that now, whether we need to, we'd have an EMR, we can just release the cost of insurance for the first year and then budget into year 2. I suspect it will only be a few £100. So maybe I could propose that as well as sort of delegated authority to the chair, the vice chair, and yourself, Joe, to explore that with Tristan. Yeah, I think those are the main things in terms of the building. That's going to have to require some sort of plan before we can go to planning anyway. So that probably feels like a September issue to address, I would have thought. Thank you. So anyway, I'm happy to propose those 2 things.
Or Councillor Creeks, do you want to come?
Just to clarify some of the points. So in regards to the query on the EMR, we do have just 8,000 in change in the EMR. So I can't imagine insurance would be too much more than, I don't know, 500, 600. So maybe recommend a release of up to £600 from the earmark reserve towards funding the insurance costs for the CIC, and then again another recommendation to full council for the applying for planning permission for a drop curb at Pole Wheel. I think that's pretty much what.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
When we also talking about £150 for like a survey of the, so we need to, is that a separate proposal? Or we could,
I'm happy to add that into my proposal.
excellent, thank you very much.
If I just come in? As Kieran and I checked, the CIC's folded. He's registered, he's closed it down on Company's House. So before you go and sort of send money on that, I think, you can check.
Well, it's delegated authority, isn't it? So we've not actually spent any money. We're just delegating the opportunity to spend the money. So I think that's a conversation between the office and Tristan. And then if Tristan's happy to reopen the CIC, we're happy to fund the insurance. And it
but
kind of
just
goes
before
like that,
you sort of like start giving something that might be folded, I think it folded back in March, but it hasn't been finalised yet. There's the time lag on that. So just yeah.
So the proposal would be for the approximately 500 for the insurance and the 150 for the survey, we're correct? And the insurance is subject to your conversation with Tristan going forward. You're happy to propose? We have a seconder for that.
Yeah, sorry, it was just up to 600 delegated authority to the chair, the vice chair, and the deputy clerk. And also wrapped up in that, the £150 survey for the land grab, and then thirdly, recommendation to full council to apply for planning.
Okay. So 500 was the insurance, 150 for the.
Up to 600 people.
Because they've got 500 a year here on the report. Yeah. So up to 600 for that, 150 for the survey. Yeah. And I think we'll do the drop curb separate because looking at what Joe Ashton's put here, he's got lots of little things, and to be honest, I don't think it costs 5,600. He wants a front. We'll do that one first anyway. You've proposed. Do you want to speak on that before we?
No, I was actually going to second it.
Okay, Councillor Morris to second. All in favour? Yeah. So that's carried. Going back then to the access, he's put street works and vehicle crossing licences up to £600, contractor 2,000, surface improvements, eco grid digger hire 2,000, front gate and fencing through. I mean, we're not going to surely have security and access control up there. I mean, that's something that's going to go wrong before we sort of turn the corner, isn't it?
It is, and also it is a public site, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure we
yeah.
want to put access control. But I think for the minute, all I'm proposing on that one is that we go to full council and seek their permission to
Yeah.
apply for planning permission.
Okay.
If they're in agreement, then clearly we can apply for that with some costs.
Yeah.
Do we need delegated authority for costs? And then the rest of it we can worry about later.
Yeah, I would recommend maybe £500 towards cost of planning. Yeah.
So are you happy to propose 500 and second it for that? Councillor Slade, all in favour? And to be honest, there's 5,600 for all of that. You can get a drop curb, pretty big, for about 3,500, and the men come and do all the work. So I wouldn't want our operatives doing all that, because while they're doing that, all the rest of the work just gets left, doesn't it? You know, get the boys in who do that day in, day out. They know exactly what they're doing, and they just do it, and they're gone, aren't they?
I wouldn't anticipate our team doing that, Chair. I think that needs to be contracted out.
Yeah, I think just the way he's written it there, I feel it's, you know, he's going to do all that service improvement. I don't know. Anyway, that's for another day, isn't it? So going back to that, you're going to go back to Tristan to see what he's doing with the CIC. We're going to put up to 600 for the insurance, 150 for the consultant the site boundary, and it'd be interesting. I'm sure we must have photos right from the beginning to see where they've dropped it off the cliff, so to speak, and up to 500, I think, for the planning. So that's all sorted.
No, I was going to, I was just waving my hand around. No, when I was, if you wanted me to be Newquay Town Council go-between with Polwheel, if that would be helpful. We have somebody, and I'm happy to support you in that if you know, because I've not been up there since it first started, to be honest with you. Because as far as I was concerned, you know, Tristan was on a roll and he was doing okay, and then obviously COVID came, and we must get who's the town councillor for Treloggan? Anybody know? Is that you? Oh, so obviously that's in your patch. So I'm not saying you have to get involved with Councillor Thompson and I, but obviously if we were going up, we might ask you to come so that you can meet up with Tristan, because it is on your patch, so to speak. Although, I mean, I'm a councillor of Pentar, but I feel I'm a councillor for Newquay, but obviously if it's your area, it's just nice if you...
It's also something I'm quite interested in.
Oh, that's brilliant. So shall I partner you with Councillor Thompson and I'll drop out? So that's sorted, lovely. Newquay and Bloom report. Oh, nobody here.
Barbara Hannon is now president and not chair of the committee anymore. So Leslie Friel's chair of the committee. We meet at Leslie's now, and yes, yes, I'll leave it at that. Anyway, well, it's there, the report in terms of from the last minutes. So just of things of note, really, is the Trenance Garden Summer Fair is on Sunday. It's lovely going down there, you know, if you're so inclined, and they're going to be having a stall down there. But it's a nice community event and worth visiting. Southwest in Bloom, their judging day is the 17th of July. So I've just put some bits in there of that are going to be happening on that day. It's very time specific to get around the site. They're going to be using the age concern minibus, as far as I know, hopefully that they can get a driver. And then
sorry, Councillor Thompson, can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I did meet with the new chair of Newquay and Bloom, Leslie Friel, and Bob Hollier, isn't it? And this morning, very briefly, and so I spoke to them about. I said I'd join the judges on the day, but also that actually we'll try and get the land train again for the judging route. So I've spoke to the land train. I'm waiting for a response, and I spoke to the RFO earlier. Apologies, Joe. I didn't see you around when I came in. She seemed happy that we could proceed on behalf of Newquay and Bloom, utilising and picking up the fee for the land train and lunch as we had before. I think I haven't got an overall figure, but I think normally it's up to about. I think we normally do it up to delegated authorities up to about £1,000, and it normally comes out of. Well, it depends where Anne decides to take the money from eventually, but it's supposed to sort of come out of grants, but occasionally doesn't come out of grants depending on what budget's left. Sorry.
So the delegated authority money was £500 for this year that we were going to be, by saving money from not having the land train.
Yes, we just felt that it was it would be much more of an experience for the judges, and one that would help them remember Newquay over potentially our next nearest.
Happy with that.
Yeah.
So obviously, okay, that's fine.
Not that we want to garner favour with the judges in any way, clearly.
Okay. Oh, that's new to you. I don't know, because I said to them about that they wanted to meet with you about something. Well, I know the issue that they wanted to meet you with about, and I said yes, you'd be fine with that. So obviously that meeting went ahead, and that's done. The Dinar Gardens fencing had been fixed, but one of the issues that's come out recently, which isn't in the report, is that the people that have bought the Hotel Victoria have also bought the Griffin. And so there was a little bit of concern as to like what's happening with the Dinar Garden. So I've asked Councillor Kenny, because it's her patch, and she's going to have or has had a meeting with the proprietors of the Victoria, because the planning they're ready for putting planning application in, and I was to ask them if they've with the garden, whether they've put an application in for Cornwall Council to have it, because we'd put it in to have it as devolved to us as far as I was concerned. But the Griffin is joined onto the Victoria behind the garden, so it might be that it's just going to be a little patch of green there. So yeah, I've got Councillor Kenny on that one. Was there anything else that I needed to talk about? I don't think there was. Has anybody got anything to come back to me, back to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a request. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for continuing to be our ears to the Newquay and Bloom. I really appreciate that. I know it takes a bit of time. The request of the environment team, I think, from Newquay and Bloom as well this morning was obviously on the week leading up to the 17th of July, making sure that all of the usual areas are appropriately resourced and made to look their best, as we would hope they would be anyway for the summer. And then an additional request of the environment team would wonder whether JC and James and Matt might be available around the time the judges might land on the Killer Court to greet them and answer any questions that they might have, if that's all right, for half an hour.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to officially thank Newquay and Bloom for doing some of the planting of the bed in front of Marcus Hill here. That it's still meant to be a work in process, but to thank them for that officially, for contributing for that. Thank you.
So nothing to vote on there, because the money's already sort of delegated authority, is that right, Joe?
You need to up the delegated, because it was £500, so you need to up it for the land, to cover the land train. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd suggest we need delegated authority up to £1,000.
Yeah.
To cover the cost of the land train.
Okay, I'm happy to propose that. If we have a seconder, Councillor Creek, all in favour? Is that your hand up, Councillor Morris?
Yes.
Lovely, thank you. Item 10, climate action group
it's me again. Well, we both have the chair. I'm deputy chair, but it's sort of like agreed that I'd be the intermediary for Newquay Town Council. But our chair is sat beside me as well. So the Kieran put in the application to National Lottery as the pre-application for the 1.5 million 3-year project on terms of how getting the community enthused about making a difference in terms of impacting behavioural change for climate change. So we're still waiting to hear back from that. When we do, they actually put a deadline on it, haven't they, for the applications, which has passed. So hopefully, I imagine that they've had a lot of applications, but hopefully we should hear back. Once we hear back, we only have a 6-week window to get that application in. So it could be that we're coming back quickly. We need to come back quickly to a committee to get the okay with it then, because part of that application includes the employment of staff. So that will all need agreeing. And of course, 1.5 million is a large sum of money, but it will be then over 3 years. And hopefully will make a huge positive impact for the people and community of Newquay. And it took a lot of hard work. The committee, we've spent months on that and looking and getting community, input into it as to where we wanted the focus to be and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, thank you for Kieran for, bearing with and getting that done. Since we're sort of a bit sitting on our hands, we've then we now meet monthly as opposed to weekly. It's very intense, that lottery bid. We meet monthly now, and we at the moment are looking at grants that are available and how we can work with groups or with the town council or with anybody that we can help and encourage to apply for via Kieran. And a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a bit longer, we wrote a proposal with the University Centre behind the zoo, Cornwall College, with Ruth Martin there, who's the not controlling, or how would you do that? Yeah, sort of principal for the college down there behind the zoo, for putting in for doing the Treezilla thing and creating tree ambassadors. And we've put that in as well in terms of stage 1 and stage 2, and getting people's, certificates and celebrating that. And then I can write the tree strategy, which will enable us then to apply for tree grants. So we've done that. And what else? We're putting in an application for bird boxes, hopefully working then with Cormac down at Trenance. Yeah, so we're just looking for grant money that people of Newquay and working with them as to what would be suitable and to do. I think that's just, is that it? Yep. Yeah.
So can I just say thank you to you and Abby for all that you do, because it's a lot of work. I don't think people realise, you don't rock up here and tell me tonight about the bird boxes and tree ambassadors. There's a lot of work went into that, and I think people need to appreciate that. Thank you. Community.
Thank you. And Kieran for bearing with. I have lots of meetings with Kieran. Poor man.
A policy?
No, so this is just to re-establish your Environmental and Climate Change Working Party. A couple of members here in the room were on the previous working party, so it's whether there's any more interested members, if you want to set it up now, or if you want to extend it to full council, it's up to yourselves. But What also was considered at full council was the operational environmental statement, and I don't think that's necessarily what you're after. That's just something that's been provided by a health and safety company. That's more around health and safety management. I would say you can review it by all means, but I think you be more beneficial reviewing your climate strategy and policy. Yeah. So I think first step is setting up your working party. Unfortunately, I couldn't find your previous terms of reference to add on, so apologies, I didn't have that to hand.
Do you know who's in the working party at the minute? Obviously yourself.
No, it wasn't. So this is the Environmental and Climate Change Working Party, which sits under ENF, as opposed to the Climate Action Group, not to be confused. I think it was ex-Councillor Larson, Councillor Slade and myself, I think, but happy to open it out to councillors who might show an interest in that council-wide, to be honest.
Yeah. So
we've got a lot of new councillors, wouldn't be fair of us to keep it to ourselves. Councillor Brooke, was he? Were you? Okay. Sorry. I don't remember what I had for breakfast, Sarah. So
Lovely, thank you. You've got to sign the policy anyway, so who's signing it, dating it.
Oh, apparently I do, yeah, look at that. Sign away.
Then we've got the facilities manager's report. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself when I came in, but I'm assuming that you're the interim.
Yeah, hi, I'm Richard.
Hi, Richard. I'm Margaret Ward. Shall we just go around and introduce ourselves? Because I really wasn't sure who you were. I couldn't see you last night, but I can see you now against your black shirt. So.
Hi, I'm Councillor Steve Slade, but I just want to, before you start, just go back to what we were saying on the... So this working party is going to basically be set up again with new members, and then from them we'll take it forward to what the whole... Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Hi, yes, so I'm Councillor Slade. How you doing? All right, good.
Councillor Nate Morris.
Hi, Richard. I'm Drew. I'm the Mayor of Newquay and Councillor for Trelance.
Hand it over to you.
Not to steal Richard's thunder, but some of the bulk of the facilities report is previous stuff before Richard was in post. Okay. So if members are happy,
go for it then.
No.
Not that I want to, but some of the main bulk of it is stuff that Richard wasn't familiar with, and then the finance reports will be for Richard to go through. So essentially, just to kind of break it down really, so myself and Richard were approached by two businesses at Watergate Bay that operate on the green space just by the toilets, and they're quite keen for an opinion of the council as to whether you would permit them to have advertising on our wall space. We've discussed this internally. I think we've even discussed it at committee multiple times about opening up some of our kind of wall space on various sites to advertisers. It's never formally gone anywhere, but there's quite a few sites, Killer Court, 4th Street, so there's a good amount of wall space there. So before we spend any more time on it, I just wanted to get your opinion as to whether you want us to kind of explore it a bit more, get some costs together, potential charging strategy. I mean, if your nearest competitors are Fernbank advertisers, and I think they're about £33 for 2-week kind of as an advertising model. So I think it's achievable for us as a council. You're not going to make, a massive amount of money, but on the flip side, you'll be supporting local businesses. So before we go anywhere with it, I just wanted to do an opinion.
I'll open it up to the floor. Councillor Morris.
I'm all for anything that generates money.
Yes, much like Councillor Morris. No, I'm very keen. I think we've talked about this a lot, as you say, Joe, and we need, you know, as Councillor North often reminds me, I like to say that we need to sweat our assets, and this seems like one way. I think in terms of other things on the agenda, you know, for sweating those assets, particularly Watergate, I know we explored the options for a kiosk potentially that we could rent out, as well as advertising on other units that you've already talked about, and as well as, you know, the potential for other parties who might be interested in some of our facilities to take over longer term. You know, the one at Pentyre seems to, you know, not Esplanade, the Pentyre Headland one seems psychological, given the Heritage Trust, I want to say their name is, taking over the car park. I have some other questions on this report. Can I ask those now? Is that all right? So brilliant news and fantastic job. Richard, I'm going to say it's all you because you're here in front of us. So well done. I'm sure aided ably by Joe and probably the rest of the team. But take the glory, Richard. So well done. All the plastering out here looks great. The contactless toilets at the Killer Court, thank God we've got those going, and that's going to generate some more revenue for us this year as well. The Porth water fountain, which I was excited to read about. I didn't know that we'd agreed a date on that. Where was the ribbon cutting, guys?
If you recall,
I know.
Mr. Mayor, it was during the PEP period.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Can we have a after the fact ribbon
you can have
cutting?
Yeah, you can have a formal launch. And yeah, so as Richard's kindly reminded me, so in the background, and I didn't bring it to this committee because I didn't want to overwhelm you in your first meeting, but behind the scenes we've been working on some signage for the fountain with our designer. We do have a design, and I've got a cost for the sign, but I didn't want to just dump it on you here and now because it wasn't in the report.
Overwhelm us, Joe. That's what I say. Overwhelm us. So loving that. I think we should definitely arrange some sort of media announcement. Yeah, let's do that. Let's have a ribbon cutting of the new water fountain. I'm genuinely excited about this, guys. This is big news.
The water fountain that we've got.
Yeah,
down
it's
there.
exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Another dolphin.
So
Did
we
we
need.
have what sort of plaque did we have on that? Why would we have a different one?
We did have an opening, didn't we?
Yeah,
There
we've
was
got a
an
little
event with
plaque
the-
beside it, so why would we not stick with the same one out at Porth? Why do we?
It's only, I mean, I'm not no disrespect to the style, but it gets lost. I think Councillor Larson made a particular point that she felt the signage was, she didn't see it because it's black on black. So I think the way I wanted to approach it was just having something a bit more vibrant and eye-catching, because the way the fountain's positioned, you kind of do need something to draw your eye to it. And so that's, yeah, I appreciate the comment around consistency, but it's just the design of the current one. I do feel it gets lost.
So yeah, so let's can we arrange that with our comms person to have an opening, and the lady from Blue, whose name is Tina. That's it. Tina's wonderful. The other thing I was really excited about was, and I know you know I've been talking about this, is getting the toilets wrapped or muralled at the station, and so fully supportive of that. Where do we sign for that? Because we need to get that done. Brilliant. Let's do it.
Yeah, I was going to propose that we look at ways of actually trying to get advertising on what you were suggesting. I'll propose that.
Sorry. Yeah. So the tunnel bit going to the toilet area has been painted by GWR, and there's meant to be. Is there a mural going in that tunnel as well?
Yes, there is. Yeah,
But that's a different spot to what your Welcome to Newquay.
That's actually the toilets.
It is actually the toilets. Do we know what the mural is going to be on that? Is it coordinated
In your
with that?
packs, Councillor Thompson,
I-
there is a image of the mural.
Yes, I've
proposed mural.
I've got that.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on the toilets.
That's what they're proposing to go on the toilet, yeah.
But we don't know what's going on in the tunnel bit. No.
So it will be the same designer that's doing both.
Okay.
So we had a good long chat in terms of the design, and whilst we talked about whether there's any benefit in having synergy in design, whereas his his approach to it was what he's doing for GWR is very distinctive.
Okay.
And he sees that as more of an entrance way into Newquay, and that's why he's come up with the design he has.
Okay.
So we did have that conversation about linking the two together, but from an artistic perspective, he didn't see any value in that.
And the other thing is, I heard from, well, via somebody else from GWR, that the canopy was going to be power washed this week. Has that been done? Do we know? Don't. Yeah. Okay. How rude. I said I'd heard via somebody else from GWR that the canopy was going to be power washed this week, and I was wondering if it had been done or not, because they'd got £16,000 for that to be power washed, and we're in negotiation again with Newquay and Bloom about doing the containers on the side. They're putting in for funding as well for putting new banners coming in on the railings for the big opening on, I think, September the 15th.
What I want to ask her, but I will go to, I'm surprised GRW are even talking, because, you know, they never want to talk to us, do they? But they took all the benches out of that forecourt, as I call it, where people come off the train. So there's no benches under cover. They're all sort of on the platform, which is such a shame. They're metal, obviously, if you get wet, but we'll have to go back to them about that. So we're obviously going to do a little bit of voting here. So the first vote will be talking about putting the advertising out at Watergate Bay. So I suppose what we should do is test one, see how it goes, check, you know, what they're advertising. Who are they? That's, you know, we say they're local, but, you know.
Yeah. It's the surf school that operates on that grass piece of land, and the kind of coffee vendor as well that also operates on that section of land. So I think you'd have to have some sort of advertising policy and strategy in place as well as your charges. So that's something that we'd work out as part of that.
I haven't finished. If you just let me take, you know, chair sort of privilege. See, I've lost my train of thought now. Because what I'd want to be really clear about is that they're advertising, and they're advertising for 6 months or 12 months. They're not going to just come in and say, we'll do 4 weeks and we're gone, because there's a lot of work goes into, somebody's got to put the boards up. So I think the strategy, and we really need to get on it quite quickly, because we want the advertising up for the summer, really, don't we? But that's what I was just going to say. So, Councillor Slade, Councillor Hub, did you put your hand up, Abby? Okay, Councillor Morris.
I actually propose that we do look into that.
I'm saying we need to just look at one. So you're proposing that we look at the Watergate Bay toilets with all the gumps that I've just said about them being, yeah, that's fine. So you're proposing, we've got a seconder for that?
Just quickly, probably a declaration of interest, because members of my family work for that surf school, so I should probably not vote.
Yeah, it was just to check if we need planning permission for that, because we have advertising stuff that comes through planning.
That would be part of the investigation.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I've already looked into it, Councillor
Okay.
Thompson, and there's a lengthy 30-page guide in terms of advertising and what's applicable, what's not, what's signed.
I know this. Yeah,
and it's still not clear really, so that would be part of that.
But I'd put then you need to put forward a budget for a thing for then maybe a planning application that needs to go on that for that as well.
Yeah, when I looked at the fees, if we did need it, I think it's £168 per sign. So yeah, up to 500 potentially.
And we present the people to pay that, not us as a town council.
This is all. I think it's probably worth given delegated authority to try and hash out some of these questions, and if it's feasible for us, and then if it is, giving us a go-ahead to do it.
And what I would say, I always say Falmouth, do Falmouth do any advertising like that? If you just got onto them tomorrow or the next day and said, do you advertise on any of yours? How did you do it? You know, like go to somebody who might have already done it. I'm sure you would do that, but it's just, you know, let's not reinvent the wheel if we can get some advice. Wrapping the toilet.
Yes.
A cost incurred with that, so are you happy to?
No cost. Boardmasters are paying for it, aren't they? Yeah.
No, no.
Because that we could just get on with that.
More than happy to propose that we accept Boardmasters' kind offer to put a mover on the front of our wonderful toilets, which of course they funded.
Yeah, happy to second. All in favour? Yeah. Right.
And yeah, it doesn't necessarily need a decision. I just wanted to steer really. So, as Councillor Creek rightly pointed out, we've been successful now with 2 sites being moved over to contactless and coin kind of hybrid. So no one's being disadvantaged. We're still providing both payment options. So Watergate Bay seemed like the next logical site to bring onto the stream. So the cost for the equipment installation is exactly the same as a Killicourt. The only additional, which I don't have costed, so I'll likely have to bring this back, but it depends on how you feel, is there would need to be some minor alterations internally. I'm just talking about an installation of a partition wall, because at the moment, if you kept it as it is, you would essentially be paying twice for the shower room. So you go into the ladies, and then you'd be paying 50p to go in, and then you'd pay an additional £1 for the shower. Whereas if you partition them both off, then it's segregated. So I know it's difficult because if you're not familiar with the site, but that's what you likely need to do to make it fair. So the shower is completely segregated from the toilet. Yeah.
How much do we charge for a shower?
£1.
Is it worth reviewing that figure?
It's currently £1 per minute.
Ah, okay. £1 per minute. Okay, then don't review that figure. That seems very reasonable. Yeah, so do we have any indication, is Simon going to be able to do that work, or?
No, I think we'd have to contract that out. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess in terms of cost. Richard might have a better idea, but I don't know, 2,000-3,000 potentially. I'm not sure. It's only a partition wall, but I'm not a builder.
Sorry, the actual cost of the contactless installation?
The actual cost of the installation of the units themselves, ignoring any kind of alterations, is £11,118, and you have 43,000 in your earmarked reserves, which would fund it.
So we do a delegated authority for that one, if you want to get on with it.
Yeah, I think, do you think it's feasible to do it before the height of the summer season?
That'll be a stretch, I'm not going to lie.
Can we get the contactless on before Boardmasters?
I wouldn't like to make that commitment. Yeah, I mean, it depends on your decision tonight, and it depends on the lead time of contractors. We also haven't got separate quotes for that internal exercise. So with the best in the world, we would try and make that happen, but I don't want to make that commitment and manage your expectations, really.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we move forward with the contactless installation at Watergate Bay toilets and give delegated authority to Chair, the Vice Chair and the Facilities Manager for up to £3,000 to complete any internal works required to make that achievable. You know, and obviously working towards the summer, but understand the pressures that we're under. Yeah, sorry, on top of, yeah. Sorry, so...
Oh, actually,
So just to be really clear, it was proposed to spend,
3,000.
no, it was the cost of the installing the contactless, and then delegated authority, chair, vice chair, and the facilities manager, up to 3,000 for any internal works that will be required. Is that all right? Does that
Yeah,
seem
that's
in
fine,
order?
Councillor Keek. Just to
Do you want them
confirm,
separated out or do you want them together?
they can be together, for clarity that it would need to be a full council recommendation because you're releasing from your EMR.
Good.
I'm going to annoy you, apologies. Given that the next full council meeting isn't until the night before Boardmasters, can we go ahead with the work on the basis of a retrospective approval of the EMR?
We can do that. I think I just need to be conscious of the risk of full council overturning it. So I think as long as this committee are on board, then it's a high risk approach, but it's an approach you can take.
Just think otherwise we're waiting until the night before Boardmasters to approve a spend that ideally we want done before Boardmasters to get a return on our investment. The July full council was was an optional one if we needed it, but no, it wasn't. It was the July one because I set the calendar with the clerk. The August is definite.
That's actually changed from the last one because I was told that the one before Boardmasters was an optional, because that makes me now not be able to that makes me now ruin me 100% because I physically can't get here that night because busiest night of the week.
Councillor Morris, the meetings are set out. We have got a thing. We all got a thing. It doesn't matter.
It was given to me by the clerk as an optional meeting in August because I did bring that up on that night.
Councillor Slade.
Sorry, just to check what we were saying there. What we're trying to do is see if we can preemptively agree to spend the money on the installation of the card reading machines before it goes to full council.
Yeah, so just for clarity, so because you don't hold that amount of money in your budgets, any EMR release requires full council approval. So as I was saying, it's high risk to proceed with the project because ultimately you're relying on full council to then rubber stamp that release. So as long as members here are of the understanding when it gets to full council, you'll still be of the same opinion and you'll vote the same way, then logically it should be a kind of final seal of approval. We have done it before, but...
So that's the point. So we've got a precedent, and it seems to me that I would find it very unlikely that the full council would be against this, because obviously the card readers, especially if we can get them in for Boardmasters, virtually every punter at Boardmasters is paying stuff by card. You know, if they come down and they need the toilet, they're not going to be fiddling around for 50p. They won't have 50p, but they'll have the cards. So it seems that, you know, we can... I think that the installation costs will be quickly overcome by the money we should bring in, hopefully.
Just as an example, so Kilcourt's already made 25% back of the initial costs, and it hasn't been in, I think it's 3 months they've been in. I will just heavily caveat it with, I haven't discussed the lead time with the contractor. So we'll, you know, do as much as we can, but I just need to manage your expectations because we will be subject to their timelines, not necessarily just ours.
Are we voting on that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So word it again, Councillor Creek, because you...
Am I really, sorry, am I doing the whole proposal again or just the...
You don't have to, Councillor Creek,
You got it, okay.
I believe it's just first and second.
Okay, all in favour? Well, we've already taken the proposal. Are you for or against? Or abstain? So, anything else on the facilities report?
Yeah, so you're going to be bored of hearing my voice, I'm afraid. So Just another item which is further down. There is a section on fire doors, but we'll bring that back to your July meeting, conscious of time. So there's not an issue, but down at Concrete Waves, the concession there, which is now the hangout, it used to be Chockies, are connected to the town council's power supply in the simplest form. So this was an informal agreement which was set up by the previous administration to facilitate Chockies essentially having power, because they're a Cornwall Council tenant and Cornwall Council haven't provided them electricity. So they run off their own sub-meter, so they pay for their own power as a top-up meter similar to the kilowatt units. But essentially they do have the potential to trip off our circuits because they're connected to the mains. And the issue that we found ourselves a lot over spring was they were tripping off the, I can't say for sure they were tripping off the floodlights, but it's highly likely that the power being drawn from the unit was tripping off our lights, because we inspected the lights, they were fine, and it's the only reasonable explanation. So I've got two options for you to consider. I'm not going to recommend either of them because I think there's pros and cons to each. So the first option is you could go completely, you could just completely cut them off. I would suggest a reasonable notice if you're going to do that, because it's, you know, they've been used to having that supply. They're not our tenant. There's no actual agreement between us and them. And to secure our infrastructure, you could do that. The other option is negotiate an actual formal agreement, which can be written by our solicitors, and there's likely there won't be a fee for that. If there would, it would have to be the tenant that bore those fees, and have a formal agreement put in place so they retain their connection, and they would fund segregating their supply in our unit. So essentially, if their unit goes off, it wouldn't impact our floodlights. And it seemed to me the more reasonable approach, given that they are a good partner to have, good stakeholder down there. And with the best will in the world, if we cut them off, it won't be Cornwall Council that they come after, it will be us, unfortunately.
Well, I suppose, you know, in truth, we wouldn't cut them off. We would negotiate that. We'd issue them with notice. I mean, all we ever heard about Chocky, you know, that they maintained the site, they did this, but in fact, there's a lot of rubbish down there. We seem to pick up all the, you know, those lights going off. We've had to pay for somebody to come out and have a look at those, so we paid for that. We weren't at fault, obviously. It is partly the unit. And I know they always say it fosters good relationship with the user group at the skate park, but if the skate park user group doesn't want to do something, regardless of whether they've got electric or not, they come after us. I think we all know that. So I think we need to be really careful about and considered about what we do. So I would want that broken down more. If we're making, this is me, this is mine, we can all have our 2 pennyworth. It has to be really clear that the electricity they take doesn't come out any of, it's a separate, totally separate unit, and they pay for any of that work. So that's what I'd be saying, because then they're separate to us, but actually they'd have a whaley, wouldn't they? Something like that, I think, is what they would have.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, our red lines have already been established to them. They've had some informal negotiations with our maintenance operative, because he knows the infrastructure quite well down there. So I've already recommended to our solicitors, if they were going to draft an agreement, they need to pay for all the costs associated with works, and they are responsible from our connection to their supply. Essentially, all that in between is completely up to them and their responsibility. And we shouldn't be held liable if there's any interruption in service, because that could be completely out of our control. One of our components could fail, and if it impacts their unit, we shouldn't necessarily be then held to account for something outside of our control. We've had power cuts down there as well. So I think I agree with you, Councillor North, it would need to be quite a robust agreement if we were going down that road.
So I'll invite anybody else, Councillor Creek, anybody else want to speak about it?
Thank you. tend to agree that, I mean, clearly I think probably the best option would be for them to negotiate their own power supply with their landlord, though I fear that might take a long time. I think as long as we can ensure that by separating their feed from their part of our feed from our part of our feed, and as long as that doesn't have any ongoing implications to our feed, as Councillor North quite rightly said, every time we send an officer down there or have to get an electrician out, that's public money that we are spending on behalf of a commercial entity. So you know, I'm really keen that that we try and help them as much as possible, and and it's a great facility that clearly that we own down at Concrete Waves. But I think if we can establish that sort of separation between our electric supply and their side of that, if you like, and presumably would that just be through their own kind of fuse box, or is it a little bit more complicated than that? Or
no, it's not too much more complicated than that. It's essentially just an addition of I'm not an electrician, but it's along those lines. It's essentially separating the connection out so it wouldn't trip off, because also it affects our toilets down there as well. So whatever connection is installed, it just trip off theirs and not the rest of the infrastructure.
And do we have a feel that the line, again, I'm not an electrician, as Councillor Slade knows, I avoid electric like the plague. The feed coming in, is it sufficient in its ampage, I suppose, to be able to be split in that way without, because I'm conscious that unit probably has a kettle, a griddle, a fryer, all these things are high wattage, I want to say, and draw lots of power. And so if we split the feed, is that going to be sufficient for what they need? Or are we already barking up the wrong tree, and and actually the only option is either leave it as it is and accept the costs to the public of having to keep going out there, or sending them to Cornwall Council and getting their own supply? I suppose that's my...
No, you're quite right. I mean, there is a limit to how much they can draw from it. If they draw too much, it will just cut them off. Essentially, it will just trip off their section of the circuit. You'd have to do a separate exercise, I suppose, with an electrician to determine if, when they've actually got all of their appliances up and running, how much that draws. And I don't think that's something that we should be paying for. I think that's something that they should have to gauge how much they need from that unit, and if they want to add this into the same exercise. It's quite complicated.
So, Councillor
Trumbull, but isn't it surely the bottom line is it's their responsibility and not the, and so they should be bearing the costs and not taxpayers' money? It seems quite straightforward.
Exactly what the ladies on my left said.
Is there not a third option where we create an agreement with Cornwall Council that, as it's their tenant, that we can be called out to get the lights tested or whatever, but then we charge that back to Cornwall Council? Is that a third agreement potential?
So I would say we wouldn't go that way, for the simple reason we would never get it back off Cornwall Council. We would struggle. Have they got hard wiring in? Presumably they have, from the truck to the feed. I think any costs are incurred, so we don't allow our maintenance operative go down there again and look and say they can do this, then they need to get an electrician in. So my proposal is, but you can all disagree because you can all have your own proposals, is that we negotiate that they get their own feed, which if they trip it, it trips them and not us. And any costs incurred, doesn't matter what the cost is, they pay everything. That's what I feel.
Second that.
Always have this about, fostering the relationship with the user group at the skate park. But the skate park user group will do exactly as they want, regardless of what we do.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Could you just repeat your proposal?
to make sure they take an electrician, and he says they can have the hot plate, whatever it is and that will be able to work off their separate unit. And should that trip, it trips them and not us, apparently.
So essentially what we were just talking about, splitting the feed at their cost. Yeah, happy with that.
They pay for everything, and we don't get our maintenance operative going down there, because he's been down there and said, oh, you could do this and this. But again, at a cost to us, not to the hangout man who's a business, and not to Cornwall Council. So
No, Chair. No, Chair. I think there's lastly in that main report are 3 financial recommendations from the RFO, so essentially procedural. I think she's just essentially tidying up the accounts from the last financial year. So the fire door surveys were an additional £412.50. I won't go into detail, but the previous manager miscounted them, so we ended up incurring additional cost. The EV charges was a additional £168.32. However, we will be getting some grant funding discount on those charges, so I think that's purely Anne just trying to recognise the additional expenditure. She's obviously going to recognise the income separately. And then the external manhole, you already approved it in the previous administration, but because it's straddled financial years, and would like to reaffirm the recommendation to full council to release that £4,184 from the property EMR for this financial year. So, yeah, 3 quite bland financial recommendations, I'm afraid.
Councillor Creek to second. Finance report 2025 for the asbestos.
Yes, so I've been looking into getting the asbestos removed from the second floor with a view of either leasing or reoccupying it. I've got 3 quotes, inclusive of air quality testing, because there's a bit of a grey area as to whether it's a legal requirement or not. But if you're going to have asbestos removed, personally, you'd want to have the air tested. So I've got those 3 quotes, anywhere from 5,400 to 8,700. Yeah.
So you've all got that in your pack, so obviously we will just go to the vote on that. We've got Richard who's recommending that we go with quote 2, Gwella Redruth, so I'm happy to propose that. We've got a seconder, Councillor Creek. All in favour of that quote? Councillor Morris, are you voting?
Can't see it.
Well, it's in the pack.
It's not on my... I'm on iBabs and I can't see it. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Happy with that. You're voting. Okay, lovely.
Sorry, I just couldn't see it. It's not on there.
Yes, so the 5-yearly fixed electrical testing is due in, well, October, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, for Mount Wise Centre. But obviously, due to the nature of the tenancies, it's been difficult trying to get someone who would do it outside of normal working hours. Yeah. But I've found 3 so far, and again, 2 of them are quite close, sort of £2,400. And the third, who was the one who did the previous electrical test, was 4,400. So they basically wanted to charge a massive premium for doing that outside of hours.
Chair, sorry, can I just declare an interest as an employee of a tenant at the Mount Wise Centre? Therefore, I won't be voting.
So obviously you've got the report in your pack. I'm happy to support the officer, which is quote number 3. I'm happy to propose. We've got a seconder, Councillor Slade. All in favour? Lovely, thank you. Do you remember last year we were going to buy something thinking we'd need it this year? Can you remember, did we do that?
We did, yeah. So they're currently in storage at Blashed. So, yeah, they haven't been put out, so they won't be receiving years' worth of additional wear and tear.
So you've all got the, just run through it briefly. We have got the report here.
Just stepping back, Chair, could we, there's something that we missed from, it's not in Richard's report and it came in quite late in the day, but we have a manhole that needs fixing at Little Fistral Toilet, and we have quotes between,
they're all pretty close, but between sort of 950 to £1,100.
Yeah, so we appreciate we didn't present it to you this evening, but we would like some delegated authority to spend up to £1,500 to repair the manhole inside the Little Fistral toilet block, because at the moment it's taking out one of our toilets and we'd ideally want it up and running for masses.
So I'm happy to propose that we give delegated authority to the... Can you let me finish before you put your hand up, please? That we give delegated authority to Richard to select with Joe.
Seconding.
Favour? Thank you.
Thank you, sorry I forgot that. So yeah, I've done a summary in my report. I won't go into too much depth, but as some of you may be familiar, Storm Dara completely obliterated our lights on on Cliff Road. Yeah. So we have been in negotiation with the lighting contractor over many, many months. The initial conversations were around Town Council recompensing them for their lost lights, which we robustly challenged because, to my mind, it wasn't necessarily our fault, it wasn't necessarily their fault. It was their lights attached to our poles. They attached the lights to our poles, so it wasn't like we'd even done that. If it was our power supplies which had tripped them off or something to do with vandalism, I would accept that. But I think in this sense, it's an old insurance term, it's an act of God. And I didn't see fit that we should just approve paying for the cost of damages. So they have now waived that. And they're also going to bear the cost of the replacement scheme down there, which is essentially lighting which wraps around the columns. It's quite an exposed area. I mean, I think if anyone's familiar with the Aldi wind tunnel, you'll know that it's pretty treacherous down there. So that's just kind of an update where we are contractually with them. What I'm seeking a recommendation on is having a full audit done of our entire infrastructure, which hasn't been done, I would say, for many, many moons, to the point where I think I'm probably the only officer in the council that knows where all the power supplies are and what feeds what, and I don't think that's not really where we should be going. So I'd like to get approval to just fully test and audit the entire scheme, what goes where, and within that, for them to scope up works for any potential remedial works that might be coming out of that. Kieran has identified some funding. Whether he's successful or not, that will be yet to be decided. And we won't know until July, mid-July, I think. That's the TRIP funding. So he's putting in a bid and we'll see what we get. But I think regardless, it needs to be done not only to assess what damage was done over winter last year, but also just to give us a picture of the infrastructure as a whole. So I've got a couple of quotes for your consideration and a recommendation, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to say well done to the Deputy Clerk for managing to get us out of those fees for the damaged lights from Christmas. That's not an insignificant amount of money that you've saved the town, and so thank you for all your hard work on that. Happy to support the recommendation, both recommendations.
Obviously isn't any other business. So I'm going to quickly go around the room.
Okay.
I always go around the room. Councillor Morris, what's your hand up for?
Go.
I feel as though I'm at school. Every time I look, I get your hand coming up. So I always go around the room. If you remember when I was mayor, I'd always go around the room and do everybody. So Councillor Slade.
Yeah, I wondered if we could approach the Duchy, because recently I was driving down what's still called the New Road for a while, and I was disappointed. I spoke to someone there and they were spraying glyphosate all over their pavements. So obviously we've gone through our biodiversity policy, and part of that was that we're going to stop spraying glyphosate because it's, for all the reasons that are obvious, carcinogenic, toxic, terrible to the biodiversity. Cornwall Council don't use glyphosate, and I just think if we could express disappointment that an organisation, a property developer like the Duchy, is prepared to lower the environmental standards of the town, because it's going to be a key part of the town. And if it's a key part of the town, it'd be really important if they could join us and not effectively. It's almost like wasting the time if they're going to just spray glyphosate everywhere. It's really. I want to try and find a way that we can talk to them and say to them, it's like, we really don't want you to do this. I don't think your residents would be happy about it either. And is there a way we can do it? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Slade, for bringing that up at this meeting. I actually had an opportunity to speak with a representative of the Duchy on Monday, and did highlight this concern to him, and was told at this meeting of Cornwall councillors that the residents of Nansleddon, they'd asked the residents of Nansleddon, and the residents of Nansleddon had asked them to in fact spray glyphosate on the streets of Newquay. After that meeting, I had an opportunity to once again ask and follow up with this gentleman to get some clarity on how he had that conversation with the residents of Nansleddon, and it seems in fact that the residents suggested that they wanted the weeds managed, but not necessarily with glyphosate. So he clarified that point, and what I did suggest to him in preparation for this meeting is that we connect yourself with this individual whose name escapes me at the moment, but I'll find it, and have a conversation. So I wonder, maybe on behalf of the committee and as the chair and vice chair, maybe you write to the Duchy and ask for a meeting with them to discuss the wider ramification of that. And just an interesting point to add, when I met with the Newquay and Bloom team this morning, we were talking about the judging on the 17th of July, and how as a town, we obviously on our own assets have this biodiversity policy that says we don't use harmful pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and that Newquay and Bloom judges would see that very favourably if we presented to them the argument for why we don't do that, which we absolutely will do. But it should be noted that the Newquay and Bloom judges are also being driven through Nansleddon, and so clearly we will need to make it very clear to them that that glyphosate is being used in that portion of Newquay at the behest of the Duchy. So just an interesting note there.
So if the Newquay and Bloom judges are being driven through Nansleddon, and they're impressed and get credit of the fact that we don't use glyphosate, you're saying that the Duchy is jeopardising our position in winning prizes in Newquay and Bloom because of their
Yeah, one would hope that the judges, with the full facts in front of them, and knowing that we are engaging with the Duchy on this matter, wouldn't mark us down, and hopefully it wouldn't lose us our gold award for what I think will be the 16th year this year. So no, we hope not, but maybe you could add that into your letter that I would
Yeah.
propose that you write on behalf of this committee.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Happy to second that you write that.
Yes, I have a couple of things actually. One, I noted that in the press that Cornwall Council have withdrawn the contracts for the car parks being done. So would that mean that the Little Fistral car park will lose its thing or not? Because I mean, or can that, or perhaps our county councillor could look into that to see if it could include that.
So my understanding, having spoken to the leader on this particular subject and encouraged him to reverse the decision, which he clearly did, I was very pleased with that because we are the most affected town in Cornwall with that decision, with 5 of the 19 car parks being here in Newquay. I do not believe that that decision also included the Little Fistral car park, though I'm more than happy to pick that up because it was lauded by the previous administration as the exemplar role model of how we should manage car parks going forward. And clearly we know from our facilities teams that all that happens is people cover their number plates over with towels as they drive in, then they make a mess in the car park, they don't pay for parking, and they don't get done because the ANPR don't see the number plates. So let me pick that up with the leader following his decision and the Cabinet's decision this week, and see. It should also be noted that I did flag to the leader as part of this discussion that we would also be very happy to take over the 5 car parks on behalf of the town, one of which was promised to the town back in 2009 when it went from Restormel to Cornwall Council, and we're just following that up with asset management.
The other thing is I've heard that the hub's going to be cancelled. The new hub, and whether we'd then be able to offer facilities back to Cornwall Council.
Can I go there, Chair? So I did have a meeting on, I've been busy, on Tuesday of this week with the strategic director for, I can't remember his title, Phil Mason, we'll call him. And this item was discussed as a part of a wider conversation around the Mid Cornwall Metro scheme. And I am aware that at the end of the last administration, and I'm going to get the name of it wrong, aren't I? But the multi-service hub, or the integrated hub, was that what they call it? The integrated service hub at the Adult Education Centre had been put on pause. My feeling is that it may not proceed, though I haven't had that confirmed. Though they are, it seems, turning the coach park, which is something that I suggested about 18 months ago, into an 80-space car park, which I was pleased to hear on behalf of the residents of Tolkien Road, who I know really struggle for parking, and I understand it will be free before 9 a.m. and free after 4 p.m. So they'll be able to use that for that, and as will users of the Cliff Road gym, because presumably that's when most people go to the gym.
When we were in PEP, the doorstep green was vandalised. Has that been repaired?
So we are going for our insurers on that one. I can't really divulge too much details about the incident because it involves vulnerable adults. However, we have had a successful resolution with the insurance, so we will be cracking on now with the repair.
No, Chair, I think I've spoken enough.
17th of July, Chair.